go to the Charity Commission website of United Kingdom, all three major influential denominations from Nigeria are currently under investigation for financial misconduct. Why is that? Abraham Lincoln said, a man's true character is known when he's given power. Power is an amplifier of what is in you.
Just because you are poor is not a yardstick for you to turn to a criminal or do what is evil because you are suffering from that.
One of the impact of an individual that poverty trauma have shaped their value system is a focus on meeting immediate needs. They don't have plans for strategic future planning.
The moment you say you are a pastor, you almost have immunity to do anything, including abusing the people, their right and everything.
Good morning, good afternoon, viewers across the globe, wherever you are watching this podcast today. We are here today to look at a very important aspect of trauma regarding religious leadership. Our focus today will be looking at religious leadership impact of trauma mindset on their leadership. What we are saying right now is that every religious leader that grace the pulpit, regardless of the denomination or the type of religion, if they have unresolved trauma in their childhood, this trauma, because it is unresolved, affects their adult leadership potential. It affects their personality. It affects their display of leadership style. And it also impacts on the so-called doctrine that they impose on the members of the congregation. So therefore, this very discourse today will be looking at poverty trauma in childhood of a leader. What are the impacts in their adult leadership roles? My name is Professor Oluwafemi Esan. I'm the Professor of Biblical Psychology at the Faculty of Biblical Trauma Psychology, London University, and Pro Dio International University, Italy. Let's start with a definition. What is poverty trauma mindset, and how does it affect an individual childhood? A poverty trauma mindset in religious leadership can lead to risk aversion, a focus on immediate needs over long-term goals. This is very important at this junction, the focus on immediate needs over long-term goals. This is a paramount display, quality, or attribute in leaders with unresolved poverty trauma in their childhood. They focus on immediate needs. They lack strategic vision in their leadership, a personal sense of failure when the institution they are leading struggles financially. This mindset often stems from personal experience with deprivation or constant exposure to suffering during their childhood, and it affects them when they become adults and lead a particular religious organization, due to the fact that they need to address and acknowledge that poverty mindset is not purely an economic problem, but a deeply ingrained psychological and spiritual one that attacks identity, a system of value of the individual, and the sense of purpose. What does it mean? It means that when a leader grows in abject poverty in their childhood, this trauma of poverty in childhood of this leader often affect their sense of identity, their value system, and their personal sense of purpose. And this fosters a culture that does not provide structural economic stability for the institution leadership because of what these leaders went through, trauma or poverty in their childhood. They are stuck due to this trauma of poverty in their childhood that is not resolved in their adult life. They tend to impart their decision-making process as a leader. Let's look at how unresolved childhood trauma affects leadership decision-making process. Number one, such leaders, they engage to avert risk. They don't want to take risk. Leaders with a background of poverty are less likely to take risk and are more likely to value tradition over innovation. I repeat again. Due to the poverty in their childhood, they tend not to take risk. They are very traditional. They will come up with saying, oh, we have to maintain the traditions. We don't need to change what our fathers have handed over to us in the times of financial management. No, this is coming from their unresolved childhood poverty. With this impact can hinder innovation and implementation of new strategies that are needed to manage the finance of the church. Secondly, you will notice that such leaders, they focus mainly on immediate needs. Their focus and their energy is always on meeting immediate needs. There's no long-term strategic financial planning for the institution they are leading. The chronic stress associated with the scarcity mindset often shift focus towards meeting urgent short-term needs and threats. This can distract them from long-term strategic planning and community building initiatives that are aimed at structural change. What does it mean? Have you not noticed that most religious leaders that are suffering from unresolved trauma, they focus on meeting immediate needs. They don't have a long-term strategic plan for the finance of the institution they are leading. They focus on immediate needs. That is a very powerful impact of unresolved childhood trauma. Another impact on the decision-making process is that unresolved childhood trauma of poverty affects high-level thinking. It impaired the cognitive skills of high-level thinking. Research suggests that poverty and the associated stress can affect high-level thinking skills, including complex decision-making, which can impact a leader's effectiveness in managing a religious institution. Critical thinking is suppressed because of the focus on immediate needs. Also, unresolved childhood poverty trauma in a leader's life. We are talking about religious organization now, which is also similar in political leadership as well. Affect their self-esteem and also affect their sense of worth. Leaders may struggle with a negative self-appraisal and lower confidence in their ability to succeed or effect change. This can manifest as taking on personal blame for institutions' financial shortcomings, even when the financial shortcomings are due to broader economic factors. Because when an individual grows in an abject poverty, it affects their sense of self-worth and their confidence. Yes. You will see in today's discourse how this is covered up by materialism and the quest to acquire material things, which are compensatory behavior to cover low self-esteem and low self-worth that they are hiding from their childhood. Because they also suffer social exclusion due to poverty in their background. What we notice that when such leaders take up the pulpit, they tend to restrict their church members from social engagement with affluent members of the society. because of this inferiority complex in their life. They build up doctrinal teachings of isolation. Have you not noticed that most of these religious leaders, they have doctrinal teachings that make their members to stay away from engaging in the community and with affluent people that are non-believers, so-called non-believers. So we now see what they resorted to, especially in Africa, is that they resorted into prosperity gospel preachers. Yes. And if you again, they resorted into preaching the gospel of prosperity as if that is the only doctrinal teaching from the Bible. Like anyone else can have a poverty trauma mindset. Some analysis suggest that this background may even influence the fervent adoption and preaching of the doctrine of prosperity gospel, especially among the Afro-Caribbean and the third world church community. We see this prosperity gospel. The core tenet of this prosperity gospel often function as a theological response to the pain, fear, and lack of control associated with poverty and suffering. What does this mean? It becomes a way of escape from poverty when these leaders assume leadership positions in various religious institutions. They focus on prosperity because the motivation is not coming from the place of altruistic attitude or purpose or assignment. It's coming from the place of trauma. It's coming from the place of running away from pain or poverty. And they will do everything in their position to attribute, to amass wealth through giving, putting the burden on the church. What are the challenges for the church today when a leader is leading a particular church institution with unresolved poverty trauma? They are very nervous in addressing systemic issues. The church institutions sometimes remain hesitant to move beyond welfare days. Like we said, they focus on immediate needs. So they focus on survival mode of preaching. That's it. And the target, there's a need for the church to develop education experiences to train prospective church leaders in the area of counseling and to deal with the past trauma before assuming leadership position, if this problem is going to be solved. Clergy selection and training. There is a recognized need to ensure that the selection and training of clergy are suitable for individuals from a working class background. That this program address the psychological impact of poverty and trauma. If we are going to solve this, because the issue of prosperity and giving and tithing and offering as the main preaching of the church is putting extra burden on people's life. People that are struggling and they are giving and giving with no prosperity in their life, with no financial increase. These have become a major burden today in the third world African churches. And that's what we're addressing today. Is there a connection between poverty, trauma, and prosperity preaching? Yes, there's a connection. Number one, the desire for control and predictability. Poverty and trauma often involve a lack of control and a sense of helplessness. When a child is brought in a background of poverty, there's helplessness, there's lack of control. Now, they now move into a position of leadership in the church. What they do, they now begin to engage in prosperity gospel, which provide them a framework to guarantee health and wealth. They teach on giving, positive confession, faith claiming. Some of them in a single service, 3 occasions of different giving service. Some of them, they have services from Monday to Friday, and every day people will have to give. These are systemic ways to control the flow, a constant flow of finance into the pocket of these so-called leaders. Yes. These offer believers, including preachers themselves, a sense of what agency to control. Yes. And security. So they have program from Monday to Friday, and on every day, there is a segment of the program that people will have to give. Ladies and gentlemen, this is coming from a desire to control, to have a constant flow of income. But is that the right way to do it? No. It's also a means of escape. When you have leaders today, especially in the charismatic Pentecostal movement, in the Afro-Caribbean churches, and also the African charismatic movement, why do we lay emphasis on giving and tithe of offering overly? It's a means of escape from poverty. A kind of poverty can create a powerful desire for an escape from hardship. For some preachers, the prosperity gospel is a way to not only personally escape poverty, but also to offer a path to their followers, particularly those in similar struggling situations. They also have a theological justification for success. The doctrine perceives that wealth is a sign of God's favor and will. This is purely erroneous. Being wealthy is not a sign of God's favor, no. But they do this theological justification so that people are motivated to seek material wealth as a sign of God's favor on their life. Hence, putting them under the constant bondage of giving and giving at the expense of their power, at the expense of their own personal empowerment and growth. For individuals who experience poverty, this theology helps them reframe their past suffering as something to be overcome through faith and their current or future success as a direct result of their righteousness alignment with God's plan, rather than luck or exploitation. Also, this is also fear-based motivation. A poverty mindset is often described as being rooted in fear, a belief that there is never enough. That's why they put up every gathering, every church meeting, people must give and they must give. The prosperity gospel, in its extreme focus on material abundance, can be seen as an overcorrection or a reaction to this deep-seated fear, promising an endless supply of resources. You see that? And blessings to ward off any return to scarcity. That is it. That's why you see them overly emphasizing on first fruit. January is coming now, on first fruit. People have to give and give and give. That is the motivation, this political motivation. Now, again, you now see that there's a connection between poverty trauma and prosperity preaching again. How? Personal identity and worth. Poverty can deeply impact an individual's sense of identity and value. That is what happened. That's why any leader standing in front of you, check their background, check their childhood. Because poverty trauma affects individuals' identity and their sense of self-worth. The prosperity gospel countered this by asserting that believers are heirs of God's abundance, which is true. However, their motivation for laying emphasis on giving and material prosperity is coming from the poverty that has affected identity and their sense of self-worth, because they will now look for external material things to compensate for the inward sense of helplessness that has been affected by growing up in a poverty background. Yeah. Poverty trauma damages personal identity, yes, and self-worth through chronic stress, social stigma, and feelings of powerlessness. Individuals may internalize negative society stereotypes, leading to a diminished self-concept and development of a poverty identity. Ladies and gentlemen, every religious leader that went through childhood of deprivation, lack, and poverty will end up developing a poverty identity. And they cover this up with this prosperity preaching, with this teaching over giving, over emphasizing on giving and giving. That is it. Because they suffered impeded identity formation when they were doing their childhood. Because children may feel different from their peers due to a lack of material position. In their childhood, these people, check their background. 98.8% of the time, every religious leader from a poverty-stricken background is carrying an unresolved poverty trauma that has led to poverty mindset and scarcity mindset. Hence, they focus on material prosperity. And there's a danger with materialism today. Materialism and poverty both have significant negative impact on personal identity and self-worth, with the former often acting as a coping mechanism for the insecurity and low self-esteem associated with poverty. Still, every human in religious leadership standing in front of you that are always boastful of their material possession and lay emphasis on material wealth and material gospel of prosperity, I can tell you psychologically, it has become a coping mechanism. They are using that as a mechanism to cover their insecurity and their low self-esteem that has been developed from their childhood exposure to deprivation and lack of resources. Therefore, materialism is defined as placing acquisition, possession of material good at the center of one's life, using them as a measure of success and a sort of happiness. Is that not what is happening today in the materialistic gospel that we are being fed today in Africa? That we put our happiness and we measure our success on material accumulations of things. But what is the psychological damage of that? It becomes a compensatory mechanism. People, particularly those from a poorer background, I'm talking of religious leaders from a poorer background that have experienced relative deprivation, feeling they have less than they deserve compared to others, may adopt materialistic values to compensate for lost self-esteem or insecurity in their lives. Don't be fooled by this overly emphasis on material wealth and prosperity. Check the background of that leader. I'm telling you, psychological evidence has shown that they are compensating for their own insecurity that has built up in their self-esteem due to the deprivation they experienced in their childhood. Possession become a way to signal status and reinforce a positive habit, externally dependent self-image. That is it. The other day, one of them was claiming to boycott jets, 3 jets during COVID. Why do you think the competition to buy jets, to build largest auditorium, it has become a competition? They are measuring their success by the number of people that attend their church services. All this external status, why do you think they put emphasis on that? It's because they are using that to do what? To compensate for their insecurity, and that becomes a status for them to cover that low self-esteem. I'm seeing 98% of them, not all, but 98.8% of them, majority of them, that's what's happening. Because they are having fragile self-esteem. When self-worth is tied to external possession, it becomes fragile and dependent on external validation. You see that? It becomes fragile. It becomes fragile. It becomes fragile. They are suffering from a fragile self-esteem. When self-worth is tied to external possession, it becomes fragile and dependent on external validation. The pursuit of more often leads to a cycle where the initial joy of a purchase quickly fades away. You see them looking for the latest car, latest phone, rich watches. They display that in their dressing. Why do they do that? Because their self-esteem is fragile and they need external validation for that vacuum of insecurity in their soul. They require constant new acquisition to maintain a sense of satisfaction. That is what we call the hedonic treadmill. And that has led to the consumer mentality from the preaching of the gospel of material prosperity. And they sacrifice quality relationship by the pursuit of material wealth. Ladies and gentlemen, we are in an age that people need to wake up to see that not all affluent external possession is not a true source of prosperity. While the pursuit of material symbol may offer a temporary psychological buffer against the negative feelings associated with poverty or insecurity, the underlying value system of materialism often undermines the development of authentic, stable personal identity and self-worth. True personal worth is generally linked to intrinsic goals such as personal growth, community contribution, strong relationships, rather than external goals like wealth and status. Thank you for your time.
So I want to really thank you so much, Professor Oluwafemi, for this conversation again, looking at the importance of trauma as it affects the people in the religious circle. Of course, not only because it affects the people in the religious circle. First, this talked about the fact that the people in the religious circle are people. They are human beings, first of all. So what affect other human beings affect them too. But where this one might become relevant and might become important for those that are watching this tutorial just now is that these people have other people under them. And what affect them eventually go on to affect the people because now they take decision, not the decision that are influenced by what is happening to them. Therefore, the people come to suffer whatever is happening to them. That is where I think the conversation of unresolved childhood trauma become very important here as a conversation. So some of the point I would like to raise there, actually I have a couple of them noted and I will be going through them one at a time just now, is you made mention of Afro-Caribbean and also Africa, in fact you use them interchangeably. So I don't know if this is something that, because I was thinking that maybe this is more of that are living in Africa. So I didn't know it was also very high among those in the diaspora. So I don't know if there is any data you could share on that, because we see that some of the biggest churches in the world are actually by Nigerian, unfortunately. Okay, I don't know whether fortunately or unfortunately. So it is very prevalent among Nigeria, this exploitation of the people using the Bible. Of course, we'll come back to that. But I just wanted to know if there is any data or statistics you can share with us about that, whether this is actually more with the Africans in Africa or the Africans in the diaspora, in this case, looking at also Africans in the Caribbean.
Thank you. You don't need to go far. If you go to the Charity Commission website of United Kingdom, there are three major Nigerian churches that are, one of them, their account has been frozen. I don't want to mention names. People, viewers, you can go there, check it up. All three major influential denominations from Nigeria are currently under investigation for financial misconduct. Why is that?
That is kind of funny, you know? That is kind of funny. It's okay, not really funny, but it's shameful. It are people who are supposed to be in position of that because you stand in the pulpit all the time and try to admonish people about what is right and what is wrong, and you are the one that is found to be violating that, not because you make an error, because anybody can make an error, but this is your model of operation. That is just the way that you are built. That is the way you operate. Then it becomes difficult to sort of explain that. So you were talking of childhood. So I'm trying to understand if there is a way people can understand how to identify their childhood trauma. Because, you know, the last time we were here, I was asking you if the people in the pulpit that are exploiting other people know that they are exploiting other people. Of course, your response was affirmatively, yes, they know that they are doing that. But now we're looking at what is making them to take certain decisions. Are they also aware that they are suffering from these impediments, or they don't know? Can you say something about that?
Yes. Let's talk about, we are going to be very blunt here, Mr. Obi. We are going to be very blunt. A man that grew up in abject poverty has been conditioned with a scarcity mindset. That poverty and deprivation in their childhood affect identity and sense of value. Now, what happened? The moment this person, this individual, regardless of whether it's religious or political leadership, assume a position of power, the next thing they want to do is to meet their financial resources to escape from poverty. They will do everything in their power to do that. That value system controls their personality. It also influences the doctrine they are teaching. Thank you.
All right. I would like you to explain poverty so that people can understand it. Because now, at one point in your explanation, you made mention of the fact that some of these pastors, some of these religious leaders, They see wealth, having affluent wealth as a blessing from God, which might be a direct opposite of what some people see poverty is. That poverty is a curse. Poverty is something of a kind of a consequence of maybe of a cause from God. So in that sense, I want you to give a empirical description of what poverty are we talking about here, so that
Okay.
people can understand it.
Thank you. So we are talking about poverty in terms of deprivation, lack of availability of resources. You see that? Resources, finance as a major factor, access to good health, access to good accommodation, access to good social capital, because this individual grew up in an environment of lack of material things. Yes, you see, poverty is a curse. Spiritually, we agree it's a curse. However, the psychological impact and mental conditioning, someone that grew up in a background of deprivation and lack of resources, they will develop a scarcity mindset and a poverty mindset in their adulthood. That's it.
All right. If you say poverty is a cause, of course, you are confirming what many of them are saying. Where is this cause coming from?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very powerful question you had. If you look at the issue of poverty as a curse, there is material poverty and there's also spiritual poverty. Okay? So if you are looking at the concept of poverty holistically, what does it mean to be? I just explained the empirical aspect of poverty, material poverty. Spiritual poverty is defined as a separation from the enlightenment of the divine. You know, when you don't know God as your true source of your happiness and self-definition, that is spiritual poverty. So those are the two poverty we're talking about. But when a child grows up in both, they lack resources, natural resources that is needed for a well-being and well-being of an individual, and they also lack spiritual resources for spiritual health. It's a combination of spiritual poverty and physical poverty. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you were saying, let us be blunt about it. No? Really be blunt about it. Many of us grew up in families where there was not enough to live, enough to survive by. But this does not automatically mean that when we are in a position of maybe being able to take advantage of people, we need to do that because we didn't have enough to grow up by. So I think as a professor, as a psychologist, as somebody who works within this area, it is important to explain that. Otherwise, we risk condemning an entire population because maybe their family didn't have enough, or maybe their community didn't have enough, or maybe by saying the definition of what does it even mean enough, what does it mean wealth, what does it mean poverty, so that people can get it clearer. Yeah.
I will put a question across to you. You are an investigative journalist. Every dictator that took over power in Africa from the bush, what did they do with that power? Every politician that came from a poverty-stricken background, what did they do with the finance of the public? Every religious leader that came from a poverty background, what did they do to the finance of the church? Oh yeah, answer the question. From your investigative journalism.
Well, that would be a good point to respond to. But of course, here I'm doing a question to you so that you are the one enlightening us. You are the one responding.
You have evidence. You are an investigative journalist. You have evidence. You've done research. You've seen patterns. That is what I'm talking about. Abraham Lincoln said, a man's true character is known when he's given power. Power is an amplifier of what is in you. So if you grow up in poverty background, like me and you are not taking advantage of people, it's because you have gone through mental transformation. That's it. You've developed a value system that is not taking advantage of the vulnerable. But what we see, dominant in political leadership, in religious leadership, every dictator takes their background. And that is what psychodynamic theory is saying about trauma. Trauma in childhood shape, influence your adult personality. That is the principle, sir.
All right. While we're sitting there, because the question actually was not fully responded to us, so I'm going to put it to you like this. Does it mean every child that grew up in a community where they don't have enough, maybe according to the standard of the day, maybe don't have enough nama mida, you don't have enough resources, to be able to live. Therefore, you have this trauma. Therefore, it's equal to you being able to take advantage of other people. Is that the direct explanation of what you're talking about here?
If they have not gone through mental transformation, Brother Obi, which is about value system, what we see from empirical evidence, research shows that poverty deprivation they experience in childhood affects their sense of self-worth and their identity. It's what's called poverty identity. Now, that poverty identity influences their mannerism and their value system. Why do you think that people from that deprived socioeconomic background, we end up becoming consumers? Even when we have a good job, you see all that we are consumers. Does that sound familiar to you, sir?
It does. Now, I still want to remain there a little bit. Now, people that live in the villages, if you use their life to compare to people that maybe live in the city or maybe live in the urban center, to those living in the urban center, they might look at those living in the villages to be poor. Maybe they don't have enough resources. Therefore, maybe somebody might say they fit into the description that you are giving here just now. But I think we need to break that down to enter into that society to be able to understand that if that is actually what it is, because I think it is far more than that. So that just because you that is living in a rural area, you don't have the resources that people living in the village have, it might mean that, but that might not necessarily be what it means. That is exactly what I'm trying to understand there. If there are still value when you live in a place that don't have a lot of resources. Otherwise, would you be clear everybody all around?
No, people living in the village, don't forget that, let's start from the pre-colonial era. Right? Let's start from that. In the pre-colonial era, are we poor? That's the question. That's the question we should ask ourselves. Are we poor? No, we're not poor. We have natural resources. We have abundance of natural resources. We are managing our agriculture. We are managing our life without the invasion of the imperialists. That's it. So the invasion of the imperialists into our community brought us the so-called civilization that has led to materialism. That's it. So anybody that grew up in the village, they are contented within the fabric of their natural resources. So they are not poor.
All right. Look at it this way. People that are living in those rural areas, so that at least we can have a clear picture for people to understand, because now maybe you are living in Lagos, then you can see people that are living in the suburb or people that are living actually in the village that maybe they don't have enough and all of that. But I wanted to respond to the question of the value. Because does it mean that when you are poor, automatically you don't have value? Because if you don't have value, you are equally poor, then you are very dangerous. But if you are poor, meaning you don't have enough, but you still have value, you can eventually grow up. Because many people that become rich, they grow up from not having enough. Because if you already have enough, then you don't need to have if you already have. So I want you to speak to the effect of value even when you might be poor, so that it doesn't mean that because you are poor, that is a yardstick that you must be qualified to what you are describing here.
Yeah. Thank you. You raised the question of value system. Yes. The truth of the matter is that poverty affects value system. Yes. It does. When some grow up in an abject poverty, lack of resources, it affects their views of life and their value system. Now, that value system now also depends on the indigenous knowledge education they have. You see that? So that's why I say in the pre-colonial era, we have a value system that is built on contentment. People are contented with what they have. You train, you understand? People are contented with what they have. So you eat, you sow, you invest, you plant, you provide for what you eat. You understand? And you are contented. We are not materialistic. But the invasion of the imperialists has brought materialism. That's where the problem lies. And that materialism has now affected our sense of judgment and our value system. This is the beginning of materialism. Now, the Europeans came, show us, there's nothing wrong in that. They show us technological advancement, then people's appetite began to change, and their value system began to change. And then it's now dominated by materialism as a sense of self-worth. That is, if I don't have this particular material acquisition, I'm not worthy. I'm not yet there. So I measure success by my status on material things. That is the journey we're talking about.
All right. So in that sense now, what I am understanding from it, that poverty might not necessarily or might not directly relate to how much money you have. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay. I think that is very important for people to understand. I wanted you to get to this point because otherwise, people will think that, okay, where in my family, we didn't have enough money, so you are condemned. No, that is not what it means. Because you might live in a place where you have very little. Let me share some experience with you. My mother would say, the only thing that you cannot share is the only thing you cannot split. She usually would say this, maybe we should, because we didn't grow up really, we were very poor in the village, where we grew up from, but we have deep value, we have high sense of respect for ourselves and all of that. Just to give you an instance, I was just actually reflecting on this topic yesterday, thinking about my eldest brother, how much he have contributed to the growth of all of us. And because he didn't smoke, there is nobody that smoke in our family. We're a very large family, no? So we sort of follow up those values. It's not that he sit down and say, nope, none of you must smoke. He never said anything like that. He just doesn't do that. And we don't do that because we just follow example. So because we were not rich, of course, we make bargain with the land, with the nature. So we go there to cultivate. That is where our food comes from. But of course, we didn't have the means to be able to live like every other person. We do not automatically condemn, otherwise we will be stealing. Because since we don't have, let's go and steal because we are poor, so therefore it is justifiable for us to go and steal from those who have. That's why I'm thinking here that it was very important for us to clarify this value system, that just because you are poor is not a yardstick for you to turn to a criminal or do what is evil because you are suffering from that. I think those are really very important. Now, I want you to say something to the effect of the trauma, because we're talking about trauma now. These people that are suffering from childhood trauma tend to undervalue innovation and therefore become very dogmatic, okay? Religious traditions and all of that. Can you explain why that is the case?
Yes, because one of the impact of an individual that poverty trauma have shaped their value system is a focus on meeting immediate needs. They don't have plans for strategic future planning. They are always after instant gratification. You see that? Because they grew up in the place of lack, it has conditioned their thinking and their appetite. So once they just want to meet immediate needs, no long-term strategic planning for the future. Does that sound familiar? Even in political leadership. Why do you think that politicians always look for the next election? And then when a new government takes place, they put aside what the previous have done. They want to start their own. And they are looking to secure the second term. That is what is happening to us. It's coming from a poverty-stricken background. Immediate needs, no long-term strategic planning. Yeah.
Okay. Among these people, many of these overly rich politicians in Nigeria, some of them are actually coming from wealthy family. For example, the current president of Nigeria, Ahmed Tinubu, is from a wealthy family. His family have been one of the richest in Africa for a very long time, even during slavery and all of that. So if it is only poverty that is needed, or is majorly what is needed for somebody to comport himself right, he would not be qualified for that. Of course, they have the money to be able to send him abroad to study. Of course, there is still a lot of debate whether he actually was there in the school and all of that. Okay, what I'm saying in a sense is that I'm not trying to debate whether or not this is right, but I'm actually saying, what about those that actually have all the work to do, and yet they still maybe start churches and still continue the exploitation of the people, despite the fact that they were not necessarily poor in their family, except of course you say there are different types of poverty. It's not just a question of money, and there are other things. I don't know if there is anything you can say about that.
Yeah. So that is the impact of materialism. Materialism affects both the poor and the rich. You see that? When an individual embarks on materialistic value system, it's coming from a scarcity mindset. it does affect the poor and the rich. So you can come from a rich background and you are still materialistic. And then the materialistic tendency in you, it now leads to corruption. You see that? And the acquisition of wealth. That is because you are suffering from not enough syndrome. That's what we're talking about. So that is materialistic tendency affecting that individual, which is another form of poverty. Thank you.
So people therefore see maybe the church or the idea of taking care of other people as a business, as a way to be able to overcome maybe their poverty now. Because if we look at it again from this angle, it means we are looking at people who lack the basic value of life or of what things really should be normally. Because if you understand those basics, you will know that it is not about the money, it's about the service. Because if it is about the service, it defeats the means by the time you start gathering the money of the people that buy private jet. Because how many people can your private jet take if you actually do the service of the people? So that is where maybe somebody might take time to be able to examine the difference between this call that they usually say, I receive a call from God. Are they actually receiving a call from God to serve the people of God? Or they receive a call from God, or maybe you were saying one time, they actually receive a call from their trauma to serve their ego. Because that is what they are doing. They are not serving the people. Because if you are serving your people, how can you build a church? How can you use the money of the church to build a school? And the school is not serving the people, it's serving other worthy individuals. So I think there is a kind of misaligned priority there that maybe somebody needs to properly understand. What can you say about that to help us?
Again, thank you so much for that illustration. It's going back to what we talk about the impact of materialism on both the rich and the poor. You see that? A materialistic lens and value system will always lead to insatiable acquisition of material wealth. And when an individual now takes a position of power and authority, whether it's in political leadership or religious leadership, they will now use that position to amass more material wealth. The example we are using in church leadership today, why should a church build a university and there is no way that the poor people that contributed to that university, their children cannot afford to attend the university from the church? Is that a moral justification for that? That's the question you raise. So what is the purpose of that university? What mission does it serve? If the church members that are low-income earners, that's what I'm looking for. The low-income earners in the church were not given specialized scholarship to attend, then we should question the mission of that university from that leader.
Control. That is another term that you use. Why is there this excessive control in most of these churches? Because if we were having a functioning state, this churches, like you said, one time in one of our previous episodes, should have been control. Because if there are control, then everything should be in proper proportion. Now, there is no proportion to how much you can grow as a church, because I don't know what is the tax regulation in Nigeria about churches, whether they actually pay tax or not. But from our indication, it appears that the moment you say you are a pastor, you almost have immunity to do anything, including abusing the people, their right and everything. So I'm trying to understand whether this excessive control that they have is actually coming from that trauma or is something different.
Absolutely. You have just answered that. You see, in my discourse before the interview, we look at the motivation of this prosperity gospel preacher. It's a form of control. They want to control the inflow of resources so that they are running away from the poverty. So they put this system of giving, first fruits, monthly giving. Imagine having a service from Monday to Friday, and every day in the section of the service, there is giving and donation. That is, they are controlling the inflow of finances to their life. That's it.
Okay. I know we have said this a number of times because I'm not trying to put the responsibility on the people, but okay, now, as a psychologist, I think you will still need your explanation here in the sense of how is it possible for them to continue to to manipulate the people, a large proportion of people, including educated people, in this way. That maybe somebody who doesn't even have money to take care of his family, but is taking the money and giving it to this individual that already have money. Sometimes it has even happened. We have seen cases of a guy that is strongly here in Europe. He bought a car and put it in the house that the family can use. One day, his wife went to the church and said, God told her to give this car to the pastor. And now the guy came now. That is the only car they have. No, I didn't give you the car to give to the pastor. Go and please give it back. Go and get the car for me. Something like that. So I think what are they using? What instrument are they using to confuse the people?
I will explain that to you. It's the same with what's called indoctrination. Okay. Let me explain to you the psychology of preaching and mental conditioning. There are two things. Every exposure to any teaching or preaching conditions your thinking. Let me say that again. Any exposure to either a teaching or preaching of any doctrine conditions your thinking. Now, the recipient, the listeners, have given you power, consciously and unconsciously, to condition their thinking. And what that does to them, because they believe in that gospel, that mental conditioning goes deep into their subconscious mind and form a belief system that control their lives. That is the psychology of conditioning through preaching.
Which means that the person who is allowed this message to get into there have a responsibility there. It's like you are bringing yourself out like a lamb to be slaughtered. So whatever they do to you, you basically have given the leeway, the privilege to do that to you. Can we say this individual? Yeah, go on.
I'll give an example. Somebody many years ago said, "Oh, I was praying for you the other day, and God spoke to me to tell you." I said, "Okay, thank you." Came back again. God spoke to me. I said, "Hold a minute." I said, "Number one, I did not ask you to pray for me. Number one, if I ask you to pray for me, I have given you the authority by my permission to speak to my life. You say you pray for me. Thank you. Appreciate that. But I have the right to reject or to receive. You cannot impose that on me. It's my universal human right to reject or to accept what you call the outcome of your prayer. Number one, you have no spiritual authority over my life. I didn't ask you to pray for me. That's it. So why are you angry that I'm not carrying out the outcome of your so-called prayer? That is manipulation and control."
So with me, there is this preacher, motivational speaker, American motivational speaker. It's actually the mentor of Tony Robbins. His name is Jim Rohn. He's late now. He was saying that every man should stand at the door to their mind. Stand guard at the door to your mind, because whatever you allow to come into your mind is going to control you. Yes. And I think this is very important for the Nigerian, African diaspora community, including those at home. Because there is this excessive, I don't know what to call it, laziness in thinking. That we don't get the information, we just, no. Well, okay, yeah, they say so. But what about the auto-criticism? What about the analysis? Because I think when we hear information, when we hear first thing, when we hear new thing, the first thing we should do is to suspect it. Because this is how we function as a species. And this is coming back from many years of evolution, because you cannot just take something, you don't know what it is yet. You need to first say, okay, no. Then you take your time to evaluate it. When you are convinced that that is right, then you take it. It means you are taking in conscious of what you are taking.
Yeah. What you just said, one of the symptoms of religious trauma is suppression of critical thinking skill. People that are suffering from religious trauma, they lack critical thinking skill, because the religious setup is that whatever the so-called leader is saying to you, you cannot question them. You have put them in the place of semi-God, that the oracle is speaking is a lie from the pit of hell. Be like the Berean Christian in the Bible. The Berean Christian in the book of Acts, they went back home to search the scripture by themselves, to check whether the things the apostle taught them are true. They have access They took intentional responsibility to read the scripture, to sort it out by themselves. And that's what we are lacking today.
I remember what I was sharing with you in the last episode that I've been a Catholic for a very long time, but not anymore. I don't identify myself to any religion. I don't need it. So at this point, I was in the secondary school. I'm reading. I just like to be able to know. I don't want anybody coming to tell me something that I don't know. I don't know anything about. Let me take my time to find out. I've been very small. I just like to do my things like that. And I have the Bible. Why can't I read? I read. I just take the Bible and say, in this year, I think I'll finish my exam in one of the, whether in SS2 or so. I said, I now have an assignment for myself. I am going to read the Bible word by word from the very first word to the last. And I did it. In fact, I also started it the second time. Because I don't think it is right for somebody to come and start telling me something that I hold in my hand that I can read myself. Why are you going to tell me? It's like another thing that I did here. When I came to Italy in the August of 2004, I said to myself, the people that I met at that time, I'm going to write a book here in this, because they saw I've written a book. They were telling me, okay, you wrote a book. Now you go to Italy, you are going to end up in prison, because they were telling me, this is what other Nigerians are doing here. But I said, no, I am not going to prison. I said, I'm even going to write a book here. They were saying, no, you don't even know what you're talking about. I said, because one thing I like, I can live in this country, for example, in Italy, and you will be interpreting the language for me, which I see people do. That, oh, I don't know how to speak Italian. Please, can you come and interpret for me? Okay, I can understand that if I'm just getting into the country. But if I be here for like 5, 6, 7 years, hey, come on. I should be able to talk in the language of the people. If I want to handle a conversation, I should be able to talk to them. In many of the occasions during my research, I want to talk to a professor at the university. I don't need any influence. I just need to go on Google and research. Okay, that is this person that is doing this and this. I just reach out to the person. I am this and this and this. I want to talk to you about this. In many of the occasions, I can guarantee you, they never said no. Come. I just go there and sit down. I'm questioning them. So I believe this should be the safety for everybody. Somebody said this is A and B. Don't just swallow it. Say, okay, I take it. Let me review it. I take it after I accept it after I'm convinced. I'm a human being.
Now, let me give you a shocking fundamental truth about spirituality and the manipulation taking place in the so-called spiritual atmosphere. I'm talking about with focus on the charismatic Pentecostal movement when they said they hear God for you. Do you know, sir, neuroscientific evidence has confirmed that every human, regardless of their color, their race, their belief system, has what is called innate spirituality. Now, by innate spirituality means that humans were born with an intrinsic capacity to have spiritual experience, which is innate. Now, based on that innate spirituality, it is also found that humans have the natural capacity to connect with the divine.
Absolutely.
Therefore, why do I need you to connect me with God?
It's kind of funny. And all right, let me put it like this, because I'm sort of curious about these questions. Why is it that for people to do something extraordinarily terrible, they need to be religious?
Of course, yes. Because the moment you use theology to back your action, look at the slave, the transatlantic slave trade. They use a theology to back it. Have you not seen it in the Bible, the colonized Bible, scriptures about slave, obey your master? Do you think that is God? Have you not questioned who put it there? Slave, obey your master. Are you saying God, the God that created you and me in his image, is encouraging slavery? Is a lie. That is manipulation and control. Theology is used to control people. Why? Because people believe in the divinity. Why is that? It is all cultures of the world that you see a form of religion. It is based on the innate spirituality, the God vacuum that every human being has. That is what they tap in. So the moment they are able to give you a theology to back their action, people believe that and they are manipulated in the name of theology. Theology is now used as control and manipulation force.
Yeah, you made mention of the slave trade. Of course, this should be common to many Africans, no? And the same is also true of the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan in America. When they capture what they call the Negro, the Africans, they will hang him on the tree. They will be enjoying and be relaxing. And they are seeing this human being. God have told them to kill him. They will brutalize him and her. They rape both men and women. They are Christians. What about Hitler? You see, all these dangerous people always need to use the Bible or use religion in one form or the other. Because there is a way to always use it to justify what is going to happen. And even in Nigeria today, in what is happening in Nigeria today, somebody need to say, I am a child of God. So I have gotten this God to liberate my people. So I will massacre all of you. If you are not religious, you cannot do that. Because you will be forced to think as a human being.
So, I mean, the question you ask is that if God is a spirit, why should I fight on behalf of that God that is a spirit? If God is a spirit and every human being is a spirit, that God that is a spirit can speak to any human being that is a spirit. That's it. So I don't need a human mediator to speak to God. Simple.
I just did a video. I'm going to bring it out. I'm going to publish it probably later later today. And it's in response to what happened in Borno a couple of days ago, where they killed a serving Nigerian army general. Of course, I don't like to talk about politics and religion, except maybe when I'm doing an interview like this, because it gets me very emotional what is happening there. It is unfair. So I was saying, okay, now somebody is saying, when I become a martyr, when I kill a lot of people, then I go to heaven, God is going to give me 72 virgin. I was saying, all right, let's think about it for a moment. If you make me that promise, I will not even take. What am I going to do with 72 virgin? For what? Am I stupid?
No, hold it. You will see when we said religion suppress critical thinking. What's this? Religion, dogmatic, promote dogmatism. Critical thinking says, give me evidence. There are 72 virgins over there. Have you ever seen anybody that went there and came back and produced evidence? Simple question. That's it. That's how you know that it is purely spiritual. There is a demonic hypnotism that takes place in indoctrination that makes people to believe in stupid things that is illogical to the mind and is contrary to the law of logic. Any human being that you see believe in any doctrine that is contrary to the law of logic and normal reasoning, they are being hypnotized by a demonic influence. I don't care the name of the religion.
Thank you for that. And I want you to prescribe some solution to the people, because I think now, based on what we have said, at least lately, it appears that the only medicine that the people need is just to think.
Yes.
Because I remember I was saying a couple of years ago, discussing the question of fear. I said, there is a way to actually conquer this fear, this monster. The other day I was talking about Odudu in Esan, those things that we were taught as little children growing up. I said, the only way to overcome it is write it down even, or take a time to really bring the picture, take the picture and analyze it. Because when you do, I encourage people that are listening to me, try it. Okay, I'm not saying jump down from 3-story building and say, okay, nothing will happen. I'm talking of those fear, up to 90% of fear that are crippling you, they are not real. How you know is write it down. Say, this is what I'm afraid of now. Write it down. Take time to examine that thing. You will see that it dissolves. You have it in front of you. When you look at it like this, it will melt. I mean, it's not there. The fear, the image, the monster is in your head. The more you give it power, the more it becomes big.
Let me give you a very good example. My mom came back from church some years ago and said, when she went to pray before a pastor, lovely people, prayerful people, and they gave my mom a prophetic message that God has chosen me to become a servant of God, that I have a call of God. and I was in medical school. Being a medical student with a level of critical thinking analysis. So I said to my mom, I'm not against what you said. I said, however, I'm not going to take it on board because that is a second-class information. If there is a God in heaven that spoke to your pastor, let that God speak to me directly. Then I will answer him.
Yeah, that is beautiful. Because if he's actually God, I am his child, there is no way, there is no reason. If you go to speak to another person, I'm not even going to listen to you. Why should I listen to you? You cannot talk to me. You need to talk to somebody to talk to me. Was I sleeping? You need to talk to me so I can respond to you. You know my name.
So what this illustration we are giving to everybody. Everybody. This is how you test. Everybody. If you want to know that God exists, you don't need anybody's church. Jesus himself said it. He said, God is a spirit, and they that we worship God, we worship in spirit and in truth. He said people will no longer go to any mountain or go to any place to find God, because God is a spirit. So let that God speak to you. Just ask God, speak to me directly. That is all. That's all. It's so simple.
Thank you so much for that, Professor Oluwafemi. We talked about poverty, childhood trauma in religious leadership. And we have talked about some of the challenges that people face and why it is dangerous in the community, particularly because these people lead people. That is the danger in it. Because if you had a childhood trauma, if you have a problem and you are alone, you still need to, it's still a problem, it still need to be addressed. But it is dangerous if people put their faith, if people's life depend on your decision. Whereas you are not capable of even deciding for yourself. Now you are deciding for an entire population. It becomes dangerous. So what is your final thought on that? What is your solution today?
Thank you for this opportunity. If you listen to my discourse, the church needs education in clergy selection and training. Every potential clergy should go through training. And trauma counseling should be a vital part of that training, because that trauma, unresolved, will mess with their leadership potential. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And for all of you that have listened to the end of this conversation, we say thank you so much for being here. We believe that you have learned something here. And if you have done so, we encourage you, why not share your thought? Let us know what you are thinking. Let us know if you are using your mind to think, or you are giving it to somebody else to do for you, because some people want other people to think for them. But we are saying, you are in charge. You are in the driver's seat. Use your brain, your mind. Speak to your God directly. If somebody is saying, God said you should do, tell the person that you don't give him or her the right to talk to your God, that you are a child of God. Speak directly to God. Whatever you believe is your God, speak directly, because you are supposed to be a child of God. So let no man use you for their evil way, because that is what they do. They do that all the time. Look at Nigeria, they mess it up because somebody believe that God tells somebody to tell me. Well, God hasn't told me. Can you see that? So, yeah, if you have any thought, any feeling about what we are discussing here, let us know in the comment section below. Of course, it's very simple. Subscribe to this channel and share with other people who might have value from it. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much, Professor Oluwafemi.
Thank you for this opportunity.